Okay, I think we are ready to get started with our webinar today. I'm so excited. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today as we dive into the world of nutrition, as we progress through our menopause journey. My name's Kim Fancher, and I will be your host today. And I'm very happy to have Brenda Navin with us today to share her knowledge and expertise on this topic. We hope this high-level exploration today will help you better understand some of the wonderful ways food can help us with our menopause symptoms and life in general. So now I would like to introduce Brenda Navin, who is a registered dietitian and CEO and founder of Launch My Health, a recognized speaker, and she is also an advocate for food is medicine. Brenda is passionate about advancing the role of clinical nutrition in healthcare and proving that nutrition can be one of the most effective, scalable tools for improving population health. Thank you so much, Brenda, for being part of our Positive Health webinar series. Your work is so extraordinary, and I was wondering if you could just take a little time right now to tell us about your career and how you got in this space.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me, and thank you for everyone who's taking the time out of your day to be with us for this topic. For me, my story really began, when I was growing up, as most of us do, and it kind of creates who we are today. And for me, I was in a family. My mom was always cooking from scratch. I never had store-bought bread unless we were out somewhere. She was making bread. We had a garden. And so nutrition was always a part of my life, and I didn't understand at that time how much it was influencing me. But when I went to college, I knew I wanted to work in healthcare, and nutrition just kind of kept bubbling up. So that became my career path. And once I got into the working world, I couldn't wait to don my white lab coat and work in a hospital and help people with nutrition. And I think within 6 months, I was just really frustrated, and it was not the career that I thought it was going to be. So that immediately kind of spurred, like, how can I change this? What can I do? And so within the healthcare system, a really large one, in my home state here in Minnesota, I was able to really bring prevention and nutrition into the healthcare system as much as I could at the time. So over the course of my career, I built that and wove nutrition into orthopedics care and cancer care, functional medicine. And then it was always a battle, though. And I always felt this kind of pull to do something like, hey, there's a way to do this in a very scalable way and help more people. And I really, I think COVID was the linchpin for me. Like, okay, this is the moment of truth. It's either now or never. And so that's when I started Launch My Health. And my goal has just really been to bring food as medicine to the masses, to make it affordable, accessible, and something that people really love and can have fun with, because food is such a social part of our being. And I think healthy food, or kind of that word healthy food, has a negative connotation, and that food can really be the fuel that brings us health, it brings us joy, and it can really make the difference between a really long, healthy life and maybe one that is poorer quality life and more suffering. So that's kind of my goal with nutrition. And I do have a special passion for women's health, being a woman myself, being a woman founder of a company, and then just seeing the disparities that happen in women's health too. This is one of my passions, and especially the topic today on menopause, because I myself am postmenopausal and have been through this journey myself, and I'm still struggling on this journey and learning, and I want to pass what I know on to other women and help other women on this journey.
Oh, that is
That was a
fabulous.
long-winded answer.
It was great. I would love hearing about that. Can't wait to hear what you're going to share with us today when you begin talking about that power of food.
Yes, yes. And with that, I think we're ready to get started, Kim.
Yes, yes, please.
Okay, great, great. So for today, what I really wanted to cover was I want to connect the dots between nutrition and menopause, and that while we're not going to solve or prevent or anything with menopause, nutrition can really help on the journey. And in particular, there's a few things that I want to highlight, things that maybe you can take away today that you can start taking action on right away if it really resonates with you. And that is the blood sugar connection, and specific needs that you might have during menopause, and especially protecting your muscle and your bone couldn't be more important as we enter into this, the second half of life, as we're postmenopausal or menopausal. And then also talk a little bit about detoxification and how endocrine disruptors can impact, um, how we maybe prevent disease or the development of chronic disease, and nutrition can help with that piece on detoxification. So that's my goals for today. And again, I really want you to walk away feeling like you have something you can do and feel inspired to make at least one change when you leave today. And Kim, if there's any questions that people have throughout, they can feel free to put them in the chat too. And I'm totally open if you want to interrupt and it seems like a question I could answer right then and there, that's fine, or we can save them to the
Yeah.
end. But if you do have questions, I would love to hear them.
Yeah, I asked folks to just post them in the chat if they have them throughout your presentation, and then we'll just review all of them at the end.
Yeah, and I love having questions. Okay, so this is kind of a, I don't know, maybe a fun fact for people, but depending on a woman's age and how many years she's been in postmenopausal, her estrogen level may fall below that of many men. So I have an example here of James, who's 54. His estrogen is 50 picograms per milliliter. Lisa's 56, postmenopausal, hers is 20. Now, of course, there's variance within this. A woman can certainly have more estrogen than a man, but to think about that we have this massive drop in our estrogen level as we go through this transition. And it's just something that happens for us. And men have a very consistent level of estrogen throughout their entire life. And they don't have that kind of up and down that we have with our hormones. And so we not only have that throughout our life with our menstrual cycle, then we hit perimenopause. And of course, when we're in perimenopause, our hormones are going up and down. They're kind of like our ovaries are sputtering. And then we hit this post-menopause phase, and then we're just at this really constant low level of estrogen and other hormones. So this is really where we see the impact of that on our health. And that's what we're going to talk about today is, again, how can nutrition help with that? So when we get into nutrition and menopause, the four things we're going to be talking about again today are inflammation, belly fat, bone loss, muscle loss. And again, I want to emphasize that going through this menopause transition is not a choice for us women. We're going to go through that no matter what. If we are lucky enough to live that long, we're going to go through that menopause transition. And while nutrition cannot prevent those changes, it can help prevent some of the chronic diseases that may happen because our hormones are decreasing during this time. And again, it's kind of like at least, and I felt like this myself, like you're just going off of a cliff at that time. My health dramatically changed for me when I went into that menopause transition. Previously, I've always been an athlete. I was eating really healthy, never had trouble with my weight. And all of a sudden, I started having abdominal weekend. I'm like, where did this come from? I'm still exercising, I'm still eating the same way. I also got diagnosed with an autoimmune condition, which we're going to talk a little bit about too during the inflammation part. So for me, someone who's been very health conscious my entire life, menopause really hit me like a Mack truck, and I feel like I kind of went off the cliff. So even people, you may feel frustrated, but some of the things that I have done and some of the things that we teach our clients too can really help with what's happening. And I have some positivity in all of this too. With my health, I know that my bones are strong, and all that exercise that I did when I was throughout my life has really benefited me as I enter into this phase of life. So let's get into a little bit about women's health history. And I mean, just like what's happened with us as women over the course of years. And one thing that I like to highlight for people as we enter into this next phase of life, we're really talking about having a really long health span, not lifespan. And lifespan is the amount of time that we spend alive. That's our years of life. So it's from birth to death. And what we really want to focus on is our health span. A lot of times we hear the term longevity now for this, but it's the amount of time that we spend alive in good health. And we really want to reduce that time that we are spent sick before the end of our life. And a startling fact is that women spend 25% more of their years in poor health compared to men. And the question is, why is that? Well, we know that women have a lot more higher incidence of certain types of diseases. And there's things that we can do to try to increase our health span. And that's really where I think nutrition comes into play, is like, how do we figure out how can we have the highest quality of life? So part of the impact of this and the gap that we have, I have a question for you. What year did the United States require the inclusion of women in federally funded clinical studies? Well, I hope you're answering this in your mind right now. And the answer is 1993. So that really wasn't that long ago. And if you're in this menopause state, you remember this time. And I think, I was talking to Colette, Dr. Edwards, last week about this. And even though women are required in these federally funded clinical studies, how that actually plays out might be different too. And there's still gaps that need to be closed up in the research. Now, I am really excited that there's the potential for $20 billion. This was just talked about, I believe, last week or 2 weeks ago in Congress in studying women's health. So we're making progress. It's slow, it's never fast enough, but at least we're making progress. And we really need women to be represented in all types of studies so that our bodies are recognized and what happens in our bodies so we can figure out the best type of treatment and prevention. This is just another fact out there is medications. Women are 2 times at greater risk and have more side effects compared to men with prescription medications and supplements. And so an example of this is Ambien. We know that women are impacted greatly by Ambien, and the dosage was actually changed for women because of that. So, and there's many other examples, but just as a general rule, these are good questions to ask yourself and maybe even ask your provider, like, has this medication been studied on women and how do women react to this medication? Is this the right dose for me? So making sure that you're a good advocate for yourself too. A couple of other general health differences, and I'm not going to go into great detail on here because this really isn't, I really want to focus on the nutrition piece and what you can actually do. But just thinking about maybe some of the other people in your lives, whether they're men or women, but thinking about insomnia and fatigue is the most common presenting symptom for sleep apnea, not the traditional one, like snoring and stopping the breathing for men. So insomnia and fatigue, what else does that look like? I mean, that looks like menopause. So a lot of the symptoms that we experience as women may be masked by menopause, and it's hard to decipher what is what. And 1 in 5 women, this is really startling for me. My mother passed away from dementia at the early age of 76, and 1 in 5 women will develop Alzheimer's disease after age 65, and men's chances are only 1 in 10. We don't know the reason for this. So this is why we need more research in all of these areas. So just really highlighting that. Additionally, another gap that we have, heart disease is the #1 killer for women, and women's hearts are different. when you think about it, like our hearts need to be able to grow a baby. We have double the blood volume when we're pregnant, and so our hearts are very different. They're smaller. Our ejection fraction is higher than men, so there's a lot of differences, a lot of nuances with women's heart. And so seeing somebody who, if you do need to see a cardiologist and making sure that they know the differences with women's health too, and making sure that you advocate for that. And then lastly, before we kind of move on to getting into the nutrition topics, I just want to share this, I think has really come into the limelight recently, is that 80% of the people with autoimmune diseases are women. Um, don't necessarily, again, understand why. And this is why we need more research in this area. And the sad part about autoimmune diseases is that the average person can take 4 to 7 years to get a diagnosis of an autoimmune condition. And again, a lot of the symptoms of autoimmune diseases can overlap with menopause symptoms, and it's very difficult to get to that diagnosis. A lot of women are kind of gaslit or minimized when they go see a physician about their symptoms too, or told that they have anxiety or depression, which can be very defeating. For myself, I can share I have an autoimmune condition called Sjogren's disease. There still is not a lot, there needs to be a lot of advocacy within even Sjogren's syndrome. A lot of people think it's just dry eyes and um, dry mouth, and that couldn't be farther from the case. There's a lot of systemic issues that are happening and systemic inflammation that happens with autoimmune conditions. So there's many, many conditions. We'll be talking about inflammation today too, but this is a big one for women. So let's get into nutrition and menopause specifically. The first one that I want to talk about is blood sugar, and I'm going to lump protein in with this too. So this is a very, I think, challenging concept for a lot of people to understand. We hear about insulin resistance all the time, and we know that health literacy is low. People don't know what the heck insulin resistance is. And insulin resistance is what is coming before you get prediabetes and type 2 diabetes. So if you have insulin resistance, it means that those two, either prediabetes or type 2 diabetes, is coming. A lot of people have insulin resistance for years. It could be identified and reversed. So this is an example. We use this in one of our courses at Launch My Health, and we try to explain really difficult health concepts in a simple way, a way that people can understand. So as you're looking at this illustration on your screen, I want you to know that glucose, or the sugar, is the taxi passenger. So you could think of that as yourself, okay? Yourself. Insulin is the taxi. So these are the taxis or the Uber driver. They're pulling up to this club here. And your bloodstream is the road. So those dotted lines, that's your bloodstream. And then we have the cell, which is the club, and that's where we've got the bouncer out there. Okay? So what happens is you consume food, and that glucose that gets broken down into glucose. So that's again the taxi passenger. And that glucose needs to get into the cell, which is the club. And so in normal instances, that insulin is driving the glucose going into the cell, and that's where your body uses the sugar. Okay, that's how we have energy. It gets into the cell. Now, when things go haywire, is we have too much sugar that needs to get into the club. So we've got lots of insulin coming out, and we've got lots of sugar, and there is a traffic jam, and the bouncer is saying, nope, you can't get into the cell. So things get backed up, your insulin level rises, and your blood sugar is going to rise. So these are ways that we know that we're getting insulin resistance. And one of the things that we typically check at the doctor, hemoglobin A1C and blood sugar. Rarely do we ever check insulin levels. Insulin levels really will help you know whether you have insulin resistance or not. Because if your insulin level is high, that means your body's pumping out a lot of that. So I hope this helps make sense of what insulin resistance is and why it's really important. So the reason why this is important is because if you continually have insulin resistance or high blood sugar, what is going to end up happening is you're going to start gaining weight. A lot of us end up gaining weight in the middle in menopause too. And so we really don't want to have that visceral fat. That's a good indication too. If you are gaining weight in the middle, you have some type of insulin resistance. And because our estrogen is dropping in menopause, we become more insulin resistant. So it's not your fault. You didn't do something wrong. You could have been eating, like me, I was eating the same type of food, exercising the same, kind of the same lifestyle. And all of a sudden, this weight gain started happening. And it's because my estrogen was dropping and I became more insulin resistant. So I have had made changes to my diet, which I'm going to talk about what everybody should be doing to try to combat this, but it worked for me as well. So I'll share this in the next few screens. So what we need to do is stabilize our blood sugar. And so one of the most important things to do that is protein at every meal. And protein breaks down into components that help build hormones. And we may have higher protein needs now too. And we need to stop skipping meals. So irregular patterns can impact hormone imbalances negatively too. So, and I want you all to know that insulin resistance is reversible. Absolutely is reversible. Additionally, actually, I want to go back to this slide here really quickly too. So for me, I'll give an example of me here with this protein at every meal. As I was growing up, I would a lot of times, or in my younger years, I would have peanut butter toast, a really fibrous bread. So I had fiber, I had some peanut butter, but mainly it was carbohydrate. And I think that was what really made a big difference for me was focusing on having enough protein at breakfast. And I'm going to talk about that in another slide here, but that was really a big difference that I noticed for me. Second up on insulin resistance, blood sugar control is avoiding sugary beverages. I think this probably sounds like a broken record to a lot of people. We hear about this all the time, but it still is a huge problem. You go to Starbucks, we have beverages everywhere. Now we have protein beverages that have a lot of sugar in them too. You can get them sugar-free. There can be issues with that too, but overall, we need to be looking at how much added sugar we are getting in our beverages and thinking about, again, where is that coming from? Is it sweetened tea? Is it juice? We have all kinds of sweetened waters, and now we have electrolyte beverages that are everybody's drinking. So all of those things can really add up, and you don't want to get all that sugar from your liquids. So just be really mindful of this. It would be a great thing to do is just to maybe jot down for a few days what types of beverages you're consuming and see if that's an area where you can decrease your sugar. Now, again, back to the most important meal of the day, breakfast. Eating a high protein breakfast can help reduce snacking and sugar cravings throughout the day. This impacts not only your female hormones that you may have, but it also impacts neurotransmitters that you have. It impacts your fullness and your hunger cues. So eating that protein-rich breakfast, and remember, breakfast is when you break your fast. So that might be at 6 a.m., it may be at 11 a.m., it might be at noon. So whenever you break your fast is considered your breakfast. So I'm not saying that you need to have breakfast before you leave for the morning or do whatever you're doing on your schedule. It needs to be whenever you break your fast, you need to have protein in that. So this is an example here of about 25 grams of protein, which you see on that plate. And really a good guideline is 25 to 30 grams to keep it really simple at every meal. Or you can calculate your protein needs by using the formula on the screen. If you want right now, if you're on a computer, you can take a screenshot of this. If you're on your phone watching this, you can take a screen grab, use this later. And I'm not sure, maybe these slides will get sent out to you as well. But you can calculate your daily protein needs by taking your current body weight. And if the little pink section down below has, if you weighed 180 pounds, you divide that by 2.2, and that's going to give you your kilograms. Multiply that by 1.2 or 1.6 or anywhere in between. And that's going to give you your lower end of your protein needs to your higher end of daily protein needs. Now, of course, if you have other things going on in your health, you can always consult with your physician. You can consult with a dietitian to help you calculate this. This is meant for general needs. And then you're going to see here in the example down below, it's going to be anywhere from 103 grams of protein a day to 131. So if you divide that by however many times you eat per day, you kind of get a gauge of how many grams of protein that you need in a meal. Now you might be going, I have no idea how much protein is in foods. Well, here's another great list. So again, you could take a screenshot of this. This is also available free all over. You can just Google this and get protein lists and find this information. But I think the headline here is, as you look at this, there are vegetarian sources, there are meat sources. And if you look at meat, poultry, you're going to see your bang for your buck, basically. You only have to eat 3 ounces of chicken to get 26 grams of protein. Whereas if you go down into some of the vegetarian sources, if you are a vegetarian, the volume of food that you need to eat to get to that higher level is going to be a lot more. So that's really I think the challenging part if you are a vegetarian is just looking at the volume of food that you potentially may need to eat. So just something to consider in terms of how do you meet your protein needs, and to be really aware of that if you're vegetarian and track that. So again, meat and poultry, you can see there's better sources than others, but they're primarily in the 20s if you have a whole muscle meat up there in the top. Beans and grains, you're going to see like pinto beans are going to be the highest, and it kind of goes down in that list down to the bottom at peas at 4 grams, and that's for a half a cup, which is a general serving. Dairy, of course, is a pretty good source of protein as well. And then there's some alternative milk sources on there. And then plant protein is listed on there. Tofu, of course, is going to be a really good source, vegetarian source. So if you are vegetarian, those are some great ways that you can get protein in. And tempeh is also 31 grams for a cup. Seafood, great source again. And then nuts and seeds over on the right-hand side. Now, just to be aware, nuts and seeds too, they may be good sources, but also be aware they're very high in calories. So making sure that you don't overconsume nuts from a calorie standpoint, if you're trying to watch your weight, is important too. So hopefully, again, this is helpful for you just to kind of see at a glance what are some good sources of plant-based and animal-based protein sources. Next up, we have detoxification, and a lot of people get scared of this word. They think that we're doing fasts and cleanses and all different kinds of things, and what we're talking about today is really how our body naturally detoxifies. And one of the things that I like to talk about is the importance of detoxification, because we are exposed to so many toxins, whether that's environmental, it can be from our food, it can be from relationships. We can have actually create toxins in our body from different relationships and stress that we can get. It can be from, like we just had, I'm in Minnesota, we had absolutely horrible smoke here from the Canadian fires, and I think some of the worst in the globe 2 weeks ago. So that can impact us, and all of that gets in our body, and we need to find a way to help our bodies get rid of this. Another example that I have is like for my mom, I was really trying to figure out why she had dementia. I had her heavy metals tested, and she was toxic in arsenic, and like beyond like super, super high in arsenic. So all of us are, our bodies are different. My parents were likely exposed to the same things, and arsenic is found naturally in our environment and water and in the soil. And, my dad is not toxic in arsenic. And so what's the difference between, you have two people, two different bodies, and we don't necessarily know, but helping support our body to get rid of excess bad hormones is good, and all the other toxins that we might be consuming. So one way we can do that is getting our glucosinolates. Now that's a tongue twister of a word, but they are found in foods like arugula, bok choy, broccoli, broccolini, Brussels sprouts, kind of that whole cabbage family, the green stuff that has that real kind of sulfur kind of smell and taste. I happen to love them, which is great. If you don't like them, that's not so great. But these are great foods to add into your diet on a daily basis to help your body get rid of these toxins. And what it does is, like, if you think of like a fly paper that's all sticky that catches flies, that is what this compound does, and it attracts toxins, and then you will excrete it in your stool. So this is one tip that I have, that if you can try to get this into your diet, it will help you detoxify. It benefits you most by chopping and chewing. It activates those compounds that we have at the top of the screen, the glucosinolates. Eating them raw or lightly steamed, which will help retain all those nutrients too. And then look at how much you're consuming and try to increase that by 1 to 2 servings. Or if you're not consuming them at all, start eating them if you can. Another thing just about toxins too, I'd like to highlight, not to focus on this, but alcohol really is a toxin. We're learning more and more about alcohol today, and that it does really impact women differently. I think we all know that women, we have to be more careful than men. Our bodies don't use alcohol the same way. We have less alcohol dehydrogenase, ADH activity in our stomach. So less of the alcohol is actually broken down. So that's why we can feel the effects quicker, even if we have the same amount. And then we have higher incidence of some of the complications or diseases from consuming alcohol too. So just wanted to highlight that there. This is something, again, in my kind of menopause journey that I have changed. I've always been just a social drinker, but significantly reduced that and really just have alcohol for special occasions now, if at all. Another thing I wanted to talk about is endocrine disruptors. So these are natural or synthetic chemicals that can mimic, block, or interfere with the body's hormones and contribute to a variety of health issues. You can see them all on the left-hand side there in that image, which is from the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences. On the right-hand side, you will see the different ones listed out and what they can actually do in your body. And I think probably the most common one is BPA, which we think about traditionally being in like our canned goods and some of the plastics that we have. So really trying to decrease some of these so that you're not ingesting them. So there's 2 ways you can help your body. You can help your own detoxification pathway and then reduce your exposure. So those are the 2 things that are in your control that you can manage. Some of the things that you can do to avoid some of these endocrine disruptors, and this is something that I've done in my house, is use stainless steel, glass, or aluminum for water bottles and food storage. I've basically eliminated plastic out of my house. Use alternatives to plastic wrap. I use beeswax wrap. I do keep plastic wrap for certain occasions when the beeswax wraps won't work. But in general, I would say that I use the beeswax wraps for everything and are really fun too. They have fun patterns. Using BPA free canned goods and food packaging. Do not put your plastic in the dishwasher, freezer, or the microwave. You just release all of those toxins right into your food. So if you do a plastic, make sure that that you do that, or that you don't do that. Reducing the amount of arsenic, as I mentioned, that's what my mom was toxic in. And be really aware of that. I just moved into a new house last year and have a well. I had my well tested, and guess what it had in it? Arsenic, of course. Choose organic produce when you can. check ingredients on your personal products too. You can use the Yuka app. It's free. There's a paid version too, which you get more. And check your water base. You can use the ewg.org tap water database for more information on that. And then I do, as we're kind of winding down here too, I want to talk about the importance of bone health. I use this acronym BUILD for bone building exercise. You got to make sure you're doing weight training, understand your risk factors. Are you on medications that reduce bone mass? Do you have osteopenia or osteoporosis in your family? You need to think about your intake of protein. That is what basically is building the scaffolding of your bone. So that's why protein is so important, again, especially in menopause, because we lose 5 to 7% of our bone mass we can lose up to 20% in the first 5 to 7 years after menopause. So that is when that estrogen is really plummeting and our bone mass can go down. And if there's one thing that's going to potentially cause quality of life issues is going to be continually breaking bones from osteoporosis. So of the utmost importance, and even more important is when you're younger to make sure you have that base. So if you have daughters, granddaughters, nieces, make sure that they're taking care of their bone health. And then loading up on nutrients that your bones need and making sure you have those really strong lifelong habits. Again, here you might want to take a screenshot of this, but here's a list of foods that would be really important for 3 very important nutrients. We have calcium foods, vitamin D, vitamin K. A lot of doctors will forget about vitamin K, and basically your vitamin D doesn't matter if you don't have vitamin K. So make sure that you get all of these foods into your diet. The recommended amounts are on there. You may need more or less. Talk to a dietitian, talk to your doctor. If there is something you need to be thinking about with the amount, I will highlight on calcium foods. Be very cautious on calcium. The max that you want to have is 2,400 milligrams a day, including food and supplements. So 2,400, no more food and supplements together. So more is not better. Calcium can impact your heart. So this is why it's important. And a lot of times people think, hey, I'm going to load up on this, so I have really strong bones. Not the case. And lastly, I want to talk about inflammation. There's 2 types of inflammation, and there's acute inflammation. This is like you get a cut and your body sends out the emergency responders, fixes that. You may get inflammation in that spot. It also sends out clotting factors so that you stop bleeding. It basically manages all that inflammation, or sorry, that wound that you have so that you survive. We need acute inflammation. I recently had tennis elbow. I had a PRP injection in there, which basically is using inflammation to heal that tendonitis, and it totally worked. It was fantastic. But that's what was happening. It was inflammation that our body naturally has to heal things. Now the problem is chronic inflammation, and that's like acute inflammation is like boiling water. Chronic inflammation is like a low simmer. And this is where we get chronic disease. So we do not want chronic inflammation. Now, there's some things nutritionally we can do that, or things that are pro-inflammatory, which means they cause inflammation. That's diets that are high in ultra-processed foods, high sugar diets. Also, we may have personal food sensitivities listed here. I have a couple of these, and that can cause inflammation in the body. And then also omega-6 fat and trans fat. So kind of think about the seed oils and all the foods that we traditionally think of as not good for us. Those are high usually in omega-6 fatty acids, which are pro-inflammatory. So these are 3 things to reduce, to limit inflammation. Now, things that we can do to add into our diet is eating the rainbow. These are antioxidants, which basically prevent some of that inflammation from happening. So eating the rainbow, all these different colors, reds, blues, purples, greens, and lignans you see here are kind of more of the brown. Curcuminoids, which is a lot of people think of, they hear the word turmeric and there's supplements out with that now too. So those are all anti-inflammatory. And then the polyphenols are really good. Green tea is on there. It's so rich in polyphenols. So as we kind of wind down here in this last minute, and I'll open it up for questions, is I really hope that throughout the presentation today, you were able to think of something that maybe spoke to you, that maybe you'd be ready to take action on. So I think the first step is to kind of assess your menopause symptoms and what's bothering you the most, and where could you potentially make a change. So, and look at your lifestyle. What is going to be easy for you to implement and maintain? I always say if you can't sustain it, if you can't see having that habit 3 to 5 years from now, it's probably not a good place to start. You may need to start smaller. So again, choose one action to start and then add a new action every 3 to 5 weeks or whenever you're ready. And then also I would say find your tribe and trusted resources. So who are your friends that you want to surround yourself with? Who are your support team, your doctor you want to choose, your online resources? Where are you going to go for credible information? So that you have kind of that tribe and resources around you to help you through this and to really thrive through menopause, because you can do that, and nutrition is certainly a part of it. And with that, I'll just share on the screen here too. This is Launch My Health, and what we do at Launch My Health is we really provide food as medicine at scale, and we provide nutrition education through digital courses that are really fun and engaging. And we also do private one-on-one appointments with people too, so they can meet with a dietitian and get kind of that really customized care. So with that, Kim, I'll open it up to any questions.
Okay, yes. Oh my gosh, that was so wonderful. And really want to thank you, Brenda, for this great presentation. There were so many great points that you made to really help leverage the power of food as we age. We do have a few questions I'd like to share with you. And the first one is going back to, skipping meals and things. The question was, does intermittent fasting count as skipping meals?
I knew that question would come up, as it always does. So intermittent fasting, I would say, is a style of eating, just like ketogenic diets. And I would say with intermittent fasting, where I see that, now this is anecdotal, where I see that working the best with women is if they have a chronic disease, if they are pre-diabetic, diabetic, intermittent fasting can work really well. I would say in general, for women that I see that are menopausal, they may end up having more issues with it. And it's because a lot of times they are under a lot of stress. They're very busy. A lot of times women in this age group are maybe caring for aging parents. They also have adult children, and they're also working. And so that combination can create a lot of stress. And sometimes intermittent fasting does not work out so well because of the stress hormones. So I would say if intermittent fasting is working for you, that is something you should continue to do. If it's not working for you, know that it doesn't always work great for women. And it's okay. You
Okay.
didn't fail.
Um, so you talked a lot about proteins, and I really loved all the information you shared with us as far as that protein intake and so forth. But what about, protein added to food? You see that so much these days, yogurts and things that already have extra protein added, or, use these protein powders. What are your thoughts on those additives?
Well, we're definitely in a protein craze right now. And I agree that protein is a really important macronutrient, but so is fat and so are carbohydrates. It's about making the right choices with those. And I think that the protein being added to everything today should be a red flag for people. And it might just be processed food hiding in a box. And so, my best advice is to try to stick to whole, fresh foods as much as possible. And if you need to, supplement with some of those other added proteins if you need to, but try to minimize that and certainly don't get all of your protein from this additive protein. And look at the protein source too. If it's whey protein, I have a feeling a lot of people, and we see this a lot in private practice, a lot of times people come in and their gut doesn't feel well when they start consuming all these products because they're consuming whey protein or a protein that doesn't agree with their stomach. And so we do see that frequently.
Hmm. Okay.
So buyer beware.
Buyer beware. Very, very good. So another question we have is, are processed meats pro-inflammatory?
Yes, they certainly can be. And I think, again, processed meats, you know, there's some certainly can be tasty. I know that. I love bacon. Just try to have it on a more of a special occasion. So I would say if processed meats are a regular in your diet, to try to work on reducing that and consume more whole muscle meats versus the processed meats, and that's going to be better for you from, just a nitrates and nitrite standpoint too, and then also sodium generally as well.
Okay. Yeah. I like that muscle meats.
Yeah, whole muscle meats. Yeah.
Good thing to keep in mind. All right. I don't see any other questions in our chat. If you have anything, if you want to add it real quick before we wrap up here.
And
So,
then Kim, I do have your slide up here on YouTube, and you can tell me
mhm.
when you want me to move to the next slide.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and share this information from Positive Health. Um, we have a lot of different types of webinars, various topics related to menopause available for you to view on demand. So you can go out to our YouTube channel to take a look at these. So just go out to YouTube and look for Positive Health slash videos, and you'll see our channel there with a variety of wonderful contributors and topics. And be sure to like your favorites and share with others. We also have them available out on our website, and also on our website when we have new webinars coming up, like we did here with Brenda, we have that promoted at our positivehealth.com/webinars site. So please visit that. And then we also have, along with our webinar series, a podcast series where we also invite amazing guests to come talk about different topics. And I know Brenda just recently recorded one with us that we'll be publishing out in August. And so you can listen to our podcast series at many of your favorite channels, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. And then also we have them available on our positivehealth.com website at our slash podcast page. So be sure to join us there. We have Courtney Pesic, who is our host for many of our podcast episodes, and Dr. Colette Edwards also hosts many of them as well. So come check out what we got available there, and be sure to stay tuned for next month when we have Brenda's, where she talks even more about, the power of food. I do see one other question before we say goodbye to our listeners here. It says, I'm curious about the correlation of vitamin D and vitamin K. How does having both help?
So you do need vitamin K to absorb vitamin D. So it's just one of those things that's why you often see them together in a supplement. So making sure that if you are just taking a standalone vitamin D supplement, that you're getting adequate vitamin K too. And so again, my recommendation, if I was talking to somebody, would be to take them together for good insurance.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you again, Brenda, so much for this wonderful information. And to all you watching, we hope that you can join us for more webinars in the future and, check out our website for more information on that. And, we here at Positive Health are always trying to leverage the power of webinars and podcasts to build awareness on the many important menopause related topics that are, important to you. So thanks for joining, and hopefully we'll see you again in the future. Take
Thank
care.
you. Thank you.